guys, SD here. So I've been animating for maybe about around 8 years now or so. So I thought I'd share a little bit about myself, maybe spill a little bit. So if that interests you, grab some popcorn, maybe a fried goom nut or two, and you'll get to hear one of the lesser stories told about an animator's experience from 2009 till today. So like the long line of internet artists and animators, I attribute my start to Newgrounds, and I say that bittersweetly. I know recently there have been a lot of animators to come out of the woodwork and praise Newgrounds, looking back on it through rose-colored glass, but I won't necessarily be doing that in this video, but I won't focus on it too much either. I will say some attribute the departure of animators from Newgrounds due to decline of Flash, but there are many others whom I've spoken to that largely attest their departure to kind of toxicity within the community, and also Newgrounds' obscuration of the classic portal and preferential treatment towards front page content has made it harder in recent years for up-and-coming animators to be noticed. Still, somewhere among the muddy handful of vague 5-star reviews and hatefully ambiguous zero bombs, you'd occasionally find one or two gems of people that really cared about giving you animation advice and seeing you improve. At least that's how it was for me for a time. So my experience as an animator started like many others, illegally downloading Flash 8, swearing and yelling into a microphone, scaring the shit out of my poor cat, then taking those vulgar sessions and turning them into animation. Like most people, I thought my first Flash was some kind of crowning achievement that would garner tons of attention and adoring fans, but there was a long way to go. If you want to see that awfully charming first Flash, I linked in the description, and something I recommend doing at great caution to the viewer. Back in the day, I was super interested in Randy Solom's epics. I grew up watching Raskin 500 and P.T. House's Bowser's Kingdom, which had a big impact. It was like discovering a place where like this one-of-a-kind content existed, and it gave us like a deeper glimpse into the universe that Nintendo only seemed to lightly glaze over. I probably watched almost every Flash back in the early 2000s that had Mario as a key word in it. As soon as I finished watching the wealth of parodies and adventures on Newgrounds, I was left feeling dissatisfied and wanting. There's so much ground to be covered, so many characters I wanted to hear from, that I felt never got their voices heard, and I realized the only way I could ever truly be sated would be to make my own stories. And I was resolved to do that, learning whatever the hell techniques I could while flying by the seat of my ass into the world of animation. One of my early projects originated from a Zelda-based nightmare I had when I was a young kid. I think everyone had nightmares about these guys. It was called Night of the ReDead. So it follows a minor character from previous Zelda games, as they were terrorized by an enemy that would regularly have been an easy feat for Link in the game. However, Link is nowhere to be found, or even mentioned in the Flash. Since it was my first serious animation, I've begun researching tutorials, learning better ways to do backgrounds and work with cameras, but I still had very little experience in the world of animation. So it might seem crude looking back on it, but this almost 4-minute project was quite ambitious, and something my future self might have chastised my younger self for doing. Although if I never did, I don't think I would have set the tone for the way I've taken on every project since. Just ruthlessly determined, while at the same time biting off way too much for me to handle. Well, almost. To my surprise, it was met with favorable reviews on Newgrounds, even winning my first front page spot and daily award. They might just seem like pixel awards, but for me at the time they kind of represented an accomplishment of an impressionable kid that never thought he'd come this far in animation. The feature spot maybe lasted only 4 days, but it was an exhilarating feeling of accomplishment. I still remember staring at the view count, watching it go up every time I checked it again and again. At the time before its submission, I expected the worst. I even at some points contemplated not releasing it altogether. After all the work I did, seeing it ripped apart by a brutal audience that was upset for not seeing Link was something I didn't really feel like dealing with. However, it turned out the people on Newgrounds were just a lot like me, hungry to hear about different characters besides the usual Link and Mario, and maybe they're wanting to hear from a darker perspective, more than just another parody too. I remember artist gamer gal Laura Kerger came out and gave me a really thoughtful and encouraging review for the project. Back in the day, I thought the world of her animations, and I remember seeing Link and the Pig on the front page when it debuted. The fact that she'd be cool enough to offer some animation advice and motivation to an early artist shows what a humble and awesome animator she is. We soon became friends, and her constructive words have carried a long way since, even still. Funny enough, only a few years ago we ended up working on a Zelda project together, centered on, you guessed it, a minor character, Andrew from Majora's Mask. Yes, Link was in it too, though. So, after a super serious project like Night of the ReDead, I felt like digging more into the spirit of what brought me to Newgrounds in the first place. Shit humor and Pokemon. So, Pokemon Poop Brown, yes, that was the title, was released in 2012. Indeed, not my finest hour, but I sure as hell vented a lot of nostalgia on the project. 10 minutes of raw, wall-to-wall, fuck I'm going to regret saying this in the morning jokes. It was good for me in some ways, because I'd never gone all out like that on a Flash before. Despite the content, I still felt like I put a bunch of soul in it, referencing a bunch of movies and stuff that always been close to my heart. For obvious reasons, I'll never release that one on YouTube because, let's be honest, its true home should always be Newgrounds. In the end, it was highly experimental but wasn't my most proud Flash. At the time, I was interested in exploring more substantial areas. It would be easy to garner a huge fan base with these kind of animations, but there were different stories I wanted to tell. In terms of view count, ironically it might be one of my most widespread animations, but it was met with a fair share of criticism, including by one of my future collaborators, a guy by the name of TJ. To my surprise, he had recently created his own series called Pokemon World of Chaos, which he had been working on to improve and trying his hardest to get featured. His screen name was TJ number 13, although it would take me some time to properly remember exactly where the hyphens in his name were. Little did I know he'd become one of my first longtime collaborators and earliest longtime friend on Newgrounds. The first thing I noticed about him was he always had a heated relationship with the Newgrounds community, especially over how the front page system worked, and its preference towards content that wasn't always very substantial. I knew his frustrations and had suffered from some of the same puzzlement before as an animator, trying to branch out into different kinds of things, so I offered to help him out a bit. I think at the time, we both noticed animation abilities was often given more attention on Newgrounds than something story-driven. Although a lot of work we did was usually fan-driven, we always tried to fill it with story-based content that showed a true appreciation for the games, as opposed to many artists today who I wonder if they even play the games or not, or just try to fit as many boobs into the YouTube icons hoping to get views and Google AdSense money. Another rant for another video, I suppose. Still, the visual aspect was important for breaking into the mainstream audience on the front page, and working together as a team gave us a better shot. For us, it was about getting our projects out there as much as we could. Also, collaboration was just a fun experience. I don't think either of us had had it on that level before. One of the first things I suggested for him was to add voice acting, since voices seemed to add a new level of quality and integration to the Flash. When I met TJ on Newgrounds, he had just finished episode 5 of his series, Pokemon World of Chaos. At first, I didn't fully understand the series, but it immediately stood out to me as something different. Namely, it wasn't an SMBZ ripoff or a Solos parody, which was all that was becoming a video game Flash genre at the time. Destiny, sad to say, it hasn't deviated much from since. World of Chaos had a refreshing use of dark story elements, plot, and grit that I think most Pokemon fans have always enjoyed and wanted in a series, and something the anime left to be desired. The fandom of Pokemon always provided us with great source material, but seemed to fail to grow with the original audience, for money reasons I suppose. But TJ's series was able to take it close from where it left off, and fill a glass with the ball serving of matured nostalgia. If you like my stuff, definitely check out Pokemon World of Chaos. I remember TJ also had a fan interactive element to his series, which inspired a lot of contests for Goombario's quests. Once his series entered Gym Leader arc, he would have some fans submit their own ideas for gym leaders for his main protagonist to battle. Only the top ones were chosen, not mine. At the time, still with my eclectic understanding of the series, the one I submitted honestly didn't quite fit with the universe, and I completely see that now. Although I did go on to design a pretty cool Elite Four member later on though. At the time, both of us were working together on our projects. I'd finally begun my long-awaited, relatively Goliath dream project of mine, War of the Shy Guys. Likewise, TJ was working on his most ambitious episode yet, Pokemon World of Chaos Episode 6 Old Wounds, which featured 3 interactive battles mixed into the plot, as well as his first episode to feature lip sync and voice acting. TJ helped me with 3D elements for War of the Shy Guys, and in turn, I helped with advice and voice acting in his new episode. Things were starting to look good, even though the ever-raising standards and voices and animation were resulting in longer episode production times. It was an exciting time for me personally, and one of my favorite memories as an up-and-coming Flash animator. Looking back, I just have a fond affection for those days, spending hours after college classes watching Ghibli films and animating elements I'd never even worked with before. Stuck in my lecture hall, jotting down little red planes instead of taking notes for the test. Winter holidays nestled up in the science building as I began the first snippets of animation for the episode. That feeling of flying by my seat was akin to being in that red plane, taking on a mob of Shy Guys in an aeronautic battle. My escape, a very memorable time. Every flash seemed to further and further test my limits, and although the project might seem crude to me at times now, it really cultivated my understanding of animation by jumping in body first, which is an experience I would always cherish and simultaneously struggle with. Towards the end of production of War of the Shy Guys, I wanted a fresh eye on the project that I had been working on almost every day for the past 6 months. I remembered an animator I knew from Newgrounds named Budge007 at the time. We had spoken briefly in the collab forums, and both enjoyed each other's work, but otherwise never really had a conversation. I messaged him to ask him for some objective feedback on the project, and if I recall correctly, He gave me some audio and leveling advice, as well as advice on a few other things too. But with the animation pretty much solid, it was time to release. The release on Newgrounds led to far greater things, like both Budge and I having more in-depth conversations about the upcoming projects and the online community. At the time, he was near finishing a project called Gigi for the end of his animation course. It was a great original short, and I enjoy seeing his 2D animation, and it encouraged me to push more in that direction. Studying a certain scene in Gigi really helped my understanding frame by frame, especially the simple scene where Gigi's doll Golly simply jumps off her shoulders. Watching it now, how the frame by frame had a more organic feel to it than the tweens would come in handy in my next project that I'd seldom told anyone about, Keaton's Tale. After Skype sessions with Budge and his friends, who would ultimately become some of my greatest online besties of all time, Joeylicious, I offered to bring TJ in, and we slowly started forming what would become our Super Lab, a group of animators and voice actors who helped and credited each other's projects as a team effort. Anna, who played Goombario and War of the Shy Guys, joined in, and we passed her around like a blunt between animators, every one of our flashes taking a hit off her awesome, wildly boundless voice talents. It also helped that she was a bit crazy like the rest of us, and we could be our truest selves in her company. Another member of our family was Andrew Ray, with his amazing art style and traditional talents, who we found based on World of Chaos fan art he did. We quickly pulled him in, and he's become one of my closest friends and wisest art mentors ever since. Ah yes, Connor. Connor's a cunt. I love working with him. Things have felt like they came full circle when I reached the end of production on Keaton's Tale. It was yet another Zelda Flash completely deprived of Link and focused solely on the development of a young boy who wandered through a forest all alone. I wasn't alone anymore though. There was a family of online friends there for me, offering mentorship and feedback like the wise Keatons they were. We also fucked around and did nothing on occasion too. I felt the same anxiousness about releasing Keaton's Tale that I did with Night of the ReDead. Would people on Newgrounds be like me and crave something darker than expected? Something more serious than a typical parody? After all this work, would it be accepted? For me, the reception of Keaton's Tale had made my mouth drop. I'll never forget how my friends told me, even before I found out, that we had just won 3 consecutive awards, one of which, a review crew pick, I had never had but only ever hoped to receive before. I remember thanking my friends for all the support, feeling like anything was possible at this point. So many projects in the works, playing at capable hands. Slowly a smile crept over my face as I once again jumped from a darker project into the extravagant, humor-filled one we know today as Goombario's story. With the voice acting of Budge and Anna at my disposal, we began to work on what was originally just a small, maybe a week-long project into a full-blown Paper Mario 64 homage. TJ was in charge of writing the script, and the animation was all up to me. After coming from a big hand-drawn project like Keaton's, I decided to leave nothing on the table, and I still think it shows today. I spent a solid week on Lady Bow trying to capture all the flavorful drama that Anna packed into those lines. Also, her performance as Goombario was memorable as well. Pure controlled chaos, and it was sweet. The process of creating Goombario's story was mostly that same experience. It had been a dream of mine long before the chat to somehow capture the essence of Paper Mario in a flash. I'd never seen anyone really use the actual backgrounds from the game at the time, nor were there any available anywhere. So I figured the only way to find them would be at the source, so I literally delved into the world of ripping them straight from the emulation. I made a video about how exactly I ripped them you guys can check out, I'll be sure to put it in the description. Then came the characters, the stars of the show. It really all started with Goompapa. Before, he was just a pretty one-dimensional, pun-intended character from the game. He loved his gait, he didn't even have much concern if his son went on a life-destroying adventure with Mario concocted by his own father. Not in my fucking Flash. Turns out, he was father of the century. In developing his voice, I pretty much told Budge to make him sound like a combination of Dr. Phil and Bill Cosby. The latter seems oddly relevant for Goompapa's character today. The rest came pretty naturally, Cooper's ascot, Lady Bow's outbursts, but ultimately Anna had free reign there. Goombario was a tricky one. We passed it around a bit in the chat, but ultimately his sort of dissonant and irritated, but angsty nature found its home with me, and I'd been channeling my tormented side into him ever since. The controlled chaos of Super Lab was sublime. One night's drunken banter could turn into a 6-month project, like it did with Challenger Approaching. We would almost nightly wreck our Skype and turn our chat into a blasphemous pandemonium. Although these indulgent conversations would take their toll, they were mostly fun times. Goombario won me an award that I'd never received for any project before, a daily first. At the time, though, the projects felt like they meant more themselves than any Pixel award could ever encompass. A real satisfaction in something else. Ultimately, I began to have an eerie feeling that Goombario's story might be one of our last releases as a team. Something dark always seemed to follow something funny, it seemed. Our Super Labs started to break apart as the summer drew on. Chats did seem to become more indulgent, and perhaps some goals within the group became too unrealistic. But those are probably a few too many dramatic instances that aren't even worth bringing up anymore. Although we aren't as intensely evolved, everyone's still friends to my knowledge. Every new project has brought me a new person in some way. Since, I've delved into the world of commissions and just spending more time improving myself in animation. Creating the first episode of Goombario's quest on my own was a bit like being lost in the forest again, but it's always interesting to see what will happen next. Hope you guys understand me a bit more. Truth be told, I'm not always going to be making Goombario's Quest episodes back to back, so don't be surprised when a different animation comes along. To a lot of people, I'm just the guy that knows his Paper Mario animation, but there might have been a few things you guys didn't know about me. Thanks for stopping by. Just some subjective memories of a Flash animator.